It's good to get to this part of the day because it means that we've had a lot of information shared and a lot of fun and excitement, and this event goes from strength to strength, so I'm really delighted to be here again. And today I'd just like to speak to you a little bit about, every year I have to try and reinvent myself and do something new, so I thought to myself, let's look at the news and what's been hitting the news in terms of breastfeeding research over the last year or so. So I had intended to do a little bit about the strategic context, but I feel that that has been done justice by my colleague Janet, so I can go quite quickly over that and then just talk about that news and what's happening out there, and then just share some of my thoughts with you to close and take us into lunch. So this is just a flash up of our current strategy, which takes us from 2013 to 2023, so we're very well along the journey, and hopefully we're doing well on that, and much of the work today establishes the evidence for the practice that we should be doing underneath that strategy. The steering group, as Janet had said, has a new chair, and that's Brendan Bonner from Health Improvement in the Public Health Agency, and all the statutory and non-statutory bodies continue to be represented on that body. There are now 7 work strands, and I'm the chair of the research work strand, and members of that subgroup are here today, so do have a chat with them because we enjoy our work together and we enjoy sharing that work with everybody. We have 3 outcomes that we work to on an annual basis, and the work today really helps support the work under Action 2, which is to influence new and ongoing breastfeeding research to build an understanding of what works in increasing breastfeeding rates in Northern Ireland. And in particular, we like to work with the Northern Ireland Public Health Research Network, and I told you earlier we have a stand here today, and do speak to Anita. And we work with the Doctoral Midwifery Research Society, which is funded through our Research Fora funding in HSC R&D division, and we work with all the PhD programmes within Northern Ireland as well. So when I had a look out there, just seeing what was really current, because every year rolls around very quickly, I found 3 key articles, and it was interesting to see the different methodological approaches that were used in those. So we have a surveillance study, a laboratory study, and a randomised controlled trial, just to have a quick look at and flavour our thoughts as we go in to talk and network together. So we have a study here which was looking at WHO findings, and in a surveillance study of children from age 6 to 9, which uses data from over 30,000 children in 40 countries, notably not the UK. The findings there were just looking at how breastfeeding was protective against obesity, and children who were never breastfed are 22% more likely to be obese. And children who had been breastfed for less than 6 months were 12% more likely to be obese than children who had been breastfed for 6 months. And again, the added protection of exclusive breastfeeding for more than 6 months led us to 25% decrease in obesity. And the RCM commended this work and just emphasised how important it was to keep our minds towards increasing the support for mothers to breastfeed. And this is our laboratory study, which looked at work that maybe you're not all familiar with, but laboratory work plays an important role in science and creating the evidence base, where they had mice whose mothers had been infected by a worm infection pre-pregnancy, and it was found that immunity was passed on to the offspring, not through antibodies and proteins as they had expected, but through other cells which are contained within the breast milk. And there's a thought that this might lead us to take work that would influence mothers and the creation of new vaccines which could then pass on immunity to children in the future. So that's exciting science of a different nature perhaps to that we've focused on today. Another one in the Telegraph more recently was focusing on work which was presented last year at a conference to do with financial incentives for breastfeeding, where we had Dr. Claire Relton along to talk about her NOSH study. And so she has done some further analysis of a health economics basis, and that work has costed the additional feeding cost per baby breastfed at £974. So that offers us a challenge really, as people providing evidence. In order to take this further and to convince the commissioners of interventions which are novel, for instance like financial incentives, we need to be able to quantify more specifically what the long-term benefits are for mother and child in order to take this type of work forwards, to convince those who hold the purse strings that that is a worthwhile endeavour, in the same way as they can easily quantify the benefits of interventions for other health conditions and health prevention behaviours. And then when I look more specifically at some of the news feeds that are more focused on the funding of research, one of our great funders is the combination of the 7 research councils. I spoke about that last year, the formation of the UKRI. I had a look at some things that were coming out from them, and in summary I found that there were many of the funders who were prepared to fund breastfeeding research, which is always very good to know that there are many platforms you go to depending on the remit and the research question that you have, and that it funded research right along the career trajectory from PhD and beyond. So there's a lot going on out there. And just to give you a few flashes up of the work that was easy to find, there was work from the ES funded by the ESRC. They were trying to publicise the work of Professor Amy Brown, who's been over speaking with us before, and her work on women's experiences and the difficulty that they had expressed within her studies about breastfeeding. And responsiveness was found to be a key in her work, and mothers who tried to feed to set routines were found to have great difficulties, and they had a reduced milk supply, and they were more likely to stop breastfeeding. And some of the explanatory factors that came out of that work were about the pressure that women feel in terms of getting the baby into a routine, that it should sleep and it should eat in a certain way, and it should allow them to get back to normal life, and that they should be superwomen and actually not behave as though they have an infant that needs to be looked after and fed. So her work's quite interesting, and good to see the SRC publicising that directly on their website. So another study that I came across, which the UKRI had funded, it was the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, had looked at digital innovation and how we might help support mothers through using technology. And I'm sure you're aware of this particular app that's been discovered. It's a feed finder, and it uses technology which is based on the TripAdvisor, where mothers can review places that they have fed in and add new ones as the list requires. And so it gives women who are new to breastfeeding the confidence that they will have a supportive environment. Something like Janet says, you can tell the minute you go into a place whether it's actually breastfeeding friendly and welcoming. So this has been found to have great uptake, with over 4,000 users. Over 2,000 locations have been reviewed and are ready for review for new mothers, and the NHS trusts in the local area are now recommending that through the normal community midwifery practice. Another study that I came across was looking interestingly at the environmental costs of not breastfeeding. And this team in Imperial College were able to quantify that breastfeeding for 6 months could save an estimated 95 to 153 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent per baby versus formula feeding. So that's very topical. We do hear a lot about the environmental concerns. So why don't we just jump onto that bandwagon again, just so that we can provide an alternative message and catch the ears of people who perhaps weren't initially thinking about breastfeeding as being an intervention to improve our environment. And the number of cars that could be taken off the road if all our mothers were supported to breastfeed would be 50,000 to £77,500 per year. So that's quite something, and that's only for the UK. The SRC were publicising some work which was undertaken in a PhD programme which used the studies, the Millennium Cohort Study and the Bourne and Bradford Study, to look at environmental influences on women's choice to breastfeed. And this particular study said that we should move away from looking at only individual factors, but to set that woman in a context. And I think we've heard that a number of times today. So we need to be mindful of those environmental factors, and the fact that white women in the study were found to have lacking the socio and cultural benefits that many other ethnic backgrounds do have, and so we need to be mindful of that, and many others have pointed to that today in their presentations. Another study which was looking at the impact of human milk banks, and I know that we have spoken of the milk bank here on many occasions when we've come to share the work. And this particular programme of work, which is underway, is going to look at 3 innovative ways of using the knowledge that we could gain from that human milk store. So the first one is hoping to use human milk to look at screening for cancer, because the milk ducts pass on cells into the breast milk and they can be investigated and see if there's potential for screening for early signs of change, which could be very easily deployed to get a new breast screening cancer test. The second studies are looking at the milk composition. I know Marlene has often spoken about breast milk composition, and we only have enough information to know for the first 6 months, and so this particular study aims to look for up to 2 years at the thousands of fatty acids comprising breast milk and look to see if there are changes over time. And the final group that they're looking at is late preterm babies who often have difficulty in establishing breastfeeding, and the study is designed to look at if human donor milk could help in these women compared to formula feed. So look forward to hearing those results. That's just commenced. And the final study that I wanted to draw attention to reflects some of the cultural differences and how we shouldn't just assume that certain ethnic groups have no problems, and that it's well known that Bangladeshi women and Pakistani women often have lower rates than initially one might expect to have. And so there's been a culturally sensitive intervention developed to see if we can change their behaviour and support them through their feeding. And there's a view to move this to other communities and to transfer the knowledge from that study into other communities. And certainly we know that we have our own cultural sensitivities and issues, and we will look to that to see if there's anything that we can do to take it into our own situation. And just to close, just to bring us up to lunch and to networking and to talking with each other and sharing what we've learned today, I feel that there's a lot of research being undertaken in breastfeeding, and it is getting media attention, which is good for us. And there are lots of different types of research, so there's room for everybody depending on how your skill set sits in the landscape. There's room for us all. And there are lots of online tools out there to help you find it. A lot of the research funders have got very good ways of having interrogable databases, so you can put in keywords, and there are PhD finder online tools, all sorts of things. And so I feel there's never been a more exciting time to get involved with research. So enjoy the day, enjoy the opportunity to share your skills and your expertise. Make sure that you get involved in research and share our passion, and through the workshop and the poll today, you can be influencing research and help us to have the right priorities and to do the work that you feel needs done. So.